How did you get to New York City?
Wow, I probably should have been prepared right away. Wow. I'm like, God Dan, a fastball immediately? Let's see.
It's a tough one, I know.
I know. I didn't know I'd be sitting next to Mike Wallace for the better part of an hour.
Oh, buckle up.
God. I grew up in North Jersey, very close to here. I went to college at the University of Miami in Florida, and I guess I'm taking you the really long way.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
And then I always knew I wanted to do comedy. I didn't know. So I grew up in the 90s in New Jersey. So New York City was sort of like coming out of, the dangers of what New York City had been, Death Wish, those movies, like whatever was happening. So I don't think first of all, nobody in New Jersey, especially North Jersey, like they have an aversion to New York City. It's very much like a little brother thing.
Yeah.
Like and it's just, Jersey is such a proud folk of people, and they would be like, why would we, what they think they're so much better than us? And it's like, well, they have Broadway, like it's not a correlation here. Like they live 20 minutes away, but would pride themselves on not going. And you're like, people fly from the Netherlands to be here.
Yeah.
And they're like, why would I want to go there? And you're like, why? I don't know. 'Cause the best in the world come here for every single profession.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to experience that? So I don't know that I ever really viewed New York City as in the cards as where to live. And then around college, I think I had an internship here. I think maybe sophomore year of college, and then right away fell in love with the city. So I was like, oh man, I would love to live here. And then as post college, it would start to come more into focus that I wanted to try comedy. I didn't know the form of it, but I wanted to try comedy. And, luckily New York City, especially at that time, this is like 18, 20 years ago, maybe.
This is 1800s.
Yeah, the 1800s. This is Victorian era New York, and this was the hub of stand-up at the time.
Hilarious time.
Yeah, Wallace Greeley had a club where the Tenement Museum now stands. Tammany Hall was rich with rooms. So I... Man, I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
You were talking about coming back here, I think, in for your internship and what
thank you. Oh, God. My internship, I fell in love with the city. And at that time, it was, if you wanted to do comedy, and especially stand-up comedy, it was the place to go.
Yeah.
So that it was, and I had, close familial ties here. It just seemed like a no-brainer to move here. And then moved here with my best friend, fellow comedian, Greg Stone, best friend since high school.
Wow.
Which was, moved here together, started comedy, started doing improv first for about a year, and then started doing stand-up. And, the rest is 17 years later, I am on your couch.
When you were at college at the University of Miami, did you have initially another plan, or was
Absolutely.
it always, what was the plan?
I was in college for architecture.
Oh, wow.
So, I have a bachelor's degree in architecture. The plan, that only happened because, and this is the truth, I used to do a story about this, but when I was 16, my Aunt Marlene was on her deathbed, and she asked what I was going to do to make the family proud. And a lot of pressure. I just had seen Three Men and a Baby. And Tom Selleck, I believe, is an architect in that movie. It might be Steve Guttenberg. Don't quote me on this. Okay. I know the comment section is now going to go crazy over a misnomer as such. But he's an architect in the movie. It was just fresh in my brain. And so I just splurted out architecture. And then she lived, and they never forgot. So I was now on this course to be an architect, and I couldn't deter because I would let down this promise I made to a family that's in waiting for me to be an architect. And my grandmother had 4 daughters. My mom was the only one who had a child. So I was like, the bit of salvation in the family. And then my dad's side of the family, he was a made man in organized crime. He died when I was a baby. So there was always a lot of pressure on me, and I was an only child, so it was just me. So I knew I wanted to do comedy. That was growing inside of me, and I think by the time I was senior year of high school, I was starting to come out of my shell, and I was starting to write sketches in class. I was just starting to act out a little bit more. I was starting to just kind of do things like, to get attention. And so I went into college knowing that, but I had, promised a family that I was Luke Skywalker to them. So I had to see architecture through. So my freshman year, we had to design a building, and this was worth our entire grade. Was on the ground floor was to be retail space, and the top floor were apartments. I wanted to do stand-up, clearly. My idea was a store where you rent older people for parties, and then they live in the apartments above. And mind you, none of this was supposed to be focused on the business end of what we were doing. This is an architecture project.
Yeah.
So I go to hand in my drawings, the end of my semester. My professor goes, "Oh, you don't hand them in, you hang them up. Everyone does a project presentation in front of the whole class, a visiting architect, and the dean." And I was like, well, that is a curveball. So presentation starts. I went last, and I'm laughing because nobody knows what I'm about to do. I haven't divulged my project to anyone because I couldn't tell my professor early on this is what I was thinking. She was just kind of like, okay, it's a storefront, it's a party store, whatever. So I launch in, and I'd done zero public speaking at the time. So I don't know, you know when you're nervous, you get pulled over by a cop, so you just tell them everything you've ever done.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I'm doing with this project. At one point, I literally said, here's where we weigh the old people for pricing. They're vegetables, that's how we treat them. Not my finest hour. The apartment part, nothing was labeled, nothing was finished. At one point, I pointed to a bedroom. I was like, I might make that a wrestling ring. It's too early to tell. I was kind of on a hot streak. Friends were laughing.
Oh,
so,
good.
I was like, that line was a bit of a heat check, but, and I kid you not, to wrap up the presentation, nobody says a word. I think I'm like, I just failed college. That's over for me. Visiting architect walks up to the drawings. He was a younger guy, hipper guy. He goes, Anthony, my only critique, I just don't know if it's a good idea putting the bedroom so close to the wrestling ring because it is going to bother the old people when they're trying to sleep. And I was like, he is funnier than me. So eventually the thing about college that's interesting, and where did you go to school?
I went to Duke.
You went to Duke. Okay. I don't mean to turn this on you. I know this is, I don't mean to turn the tables and shift here.
Talk about a curveball.
Yeah. Yeah. This is how I felt out of the gate when you asked me that New York question. I almost walked out of your apartment. Head hung low. Thanks for the water. We tried.
We did.
We'll do this again.
Effort.
Another attempt in 6 months when I'm ready.
Okay.
But so yeah, asking that. So you can. What did you go to college for?
I studied political science.
So it wasn't podcasting.
It wasn't podcasting.
Okay, okay.
No. Yeah.
So yeah, so my point being, like, when you go to school, for one thing and end up doing another thing. I mean that. Or maybe more so is my point. College is so theoretical.
Yeah.
So like it's very easy to enjoy the subject matter because the stakes of a budget aren't there.
Yes.
The stakes of practicality of the real world aren't there. So over time, I did fall in love with architecture. I'd always, I loved to draw. It was closely related to that. Conceptually, I loved architecture. There was a poetry behind theory that I really enjoyed. I mean, architecture there's sculptures you can live in. And I don't think, people take into account what it is as a whole and like what it has to do in terms of like, you don't notice it because you're inside a building.
Yeah.
But like the measured moves, not just to make it pleasurable, but also to like, there is some kind of emotional resonance inside you with living in the building is where art comes in. And like those things do matter no matter how underlying they are in you. So like there was something to that I really thought was beautiful. So, I ended up getting my degree in architecture and kind of becoming competent in the way that like I could I was pretty good as conceptually speaking, but then like practically I have no brain for space or logistics. After that, I worked in an office in Jersey for about a year and a half. It was a familial run office. It was pretty funny. And I'm in contact with the two brothers still, but it was like, it was an Italian family that owned this architecture practice. And like, I mean, there was the dad, his two sons, the mom was the accountant. And then it was me and another intern and one other woman. And the dad was trying so hard. I took years off his life. I mean, I was so bad. Nothing in college, all the theoretical, flowery bullshit prepares you for like, the minutia and the practicality of architecture in practice. So I just felt so bad. But the brothers are awesome. Like I will do shows sometimes in Jersey and they will come and they just laugh because they're like, it was crazy that you worked here. Especially now, knowing like with the other road that you took and where it's ended up. And especially hearing you on podcasts and some of the material you have, the fact that you were working here is baffling. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
You said your dad was a made man.
Oh yeah,
in the Mafia. How much do you know about his story?
I know a good amount. There's I mean, I know a lot. Not ever. Obviously, I can't ever divulge names or ties or things like that. But it was sort of a slow leak for me. So he died when I was 7 months old. And then, and feel free to interrupt me as I'm like rambling on and being boring. Just please cut me off for God's sakes. Like, do not feel shy about being like, I have to alter course. God knows where you're taking us because I'm not the best at this. I've done it for a while.
Next two of us.
Yeah. No, you seem good. You're listening. You're asking the right questions. You seem great. But anyway, so I didn't, my mom would like leak, she was very like careful about what she said. There's a lot of reasons why she didn't want me to know. Some safety, others just like basic, shame. She didn't want me to walk with the stigma of whatever that meant. She basically wanted me to have a fresh chance at a life that was outside of that. Yeah. And so I didn't really know much. She would drop little hints. Like I hadn't grown from first grade to third grade. So she was very worried about bullying. So she made it a point to be like, your dad was a guy who didn't take shit from anyone. Yeah. So the rest of the things, it was interesting because, especially with a father, because like as a boy, I was able to invent this mythical figure. I felt lucky in some senses. Like other kids had to deal with whoever their dad was. Yeah. And they were stuck shaping him with what they saw and what they heard and, whoever they were. Whereas like I got to create based on whatever I needed him to be in that moment. So like weirdly, even though he wasn't there, he became important of the sense that he was this like immaculate figure of my imagination. So that was helpful in like when, dire moments, I guess, growing up. But then when I was 18, I was playing pickup basketball in the park and there was a guy there no one had ever seen before, looked similar to me, but I just kind of looked like the better version of me in every way. Like I was like, wow, we have the same eyebrows. But then from there, wow, do we take two different paths, He was like 6 feet tall. He looks like an Italian soccer player. Yeah. And like, I was like, wow, that's, so that after the game, basketball, everyone's calling you by your last name. After the game, he was like, if your last name is DeVito, I'm your cousin from your father's side. Whoa. I go home to tell my mom. She goes, I have to tell you about your dad. He wasn't a regular guy. Your dad was a made man in a crime family. And then there was a sincerity to her voice and a seriousness in her eyes that I just kind of knew not to ask any more questions. And also she told me, you can never tell this to anyone. And my mom was never really someone, she always put on a brave face for me, no matter how she was feeling. I think it's little bit of like her past, who she is, whatever. And it was just a face I had never really seen her wear before. So I was like, okay, that's, good enough for me. I'm an 18-year-old guy. That's kind of interesting. It's kind of sucks. I can't tell anyone because now this is the most interesting thing about me. And then when I was 30, my I mean, I've been married now. I've been married for a couple of years. Been with my wife, I think, 13 or 14 years. But my girlfriend prior to her in New York, I had told her a couple of years into us dating, I had finally told her, and I was like, just don't look him up, because I had a feeling there was a lot more to the story than just what my mom told me, and I don't know that I had ever really been emotionally ready for the consequences of that. I didn't want to rock the boat. I was like, my life is good. I don't need to bring on. Also, too, I think, especially as a comedian, I'm sure with every artist you talk to, you're like, I'm already fucked up enough, you know. Like, do I really need to add more kindling to this growing fire? So I was like, don't look him up. She looked him up. While after we went, I slept that night, and in the morning she was like, you should look for yourself. And then when I did, I learned, sort of how he died, which, incidentally, it is dark, but it is kind of funny. My mom said he died in a car accident. He was found in the trunk. So yeah, a bit of a stretch to call that a car accident. A car on purpose, if I've ever heard one, Dan. But yeah. And then I learned also that, I mean, obviously that's gruesome, and but more so, I think it was the more difficult details of like he went to prison for armed robbery, conspiracy, more violent charges. For I think 5 years he went to prison, and then after that there was a book that was written about my family, basically. And in that book, it was written in the 70s. It was one of the earliest books of like, here is an inside look at the world of organized crime, and it was specifically written about my family. And in that book is like when there were more details that were a little bit more, were really impossible to reconcile with, just in terms of like who I had invented based on who he was actually. And then like, yeah, there is this like obviously glamorous, interesting, compelling element to that world. But then like, it is different when you're like, oh, that's my father.
Yeah.
So like some of the things that I was reading that he did and or said were not, super easy, even at a 40-year-old, late 30s, early 40s, to process that.
Yeah.
And then, but then, it was good because it, you still, obviously, because it's your father, I mean, more so because it's your mother and you love your mother, and you want the man that was with her to have loved her, to see her in the same way. So you want him to still be this, like, obviously not a saintly figure, but still find the good in him. So that, I think, opened me up more empathetically in terms of like how these people become who they are. And it's not just like, obviously there are aberrations in the system, but for the most part, like it goes back to the history of Italian Americans and like the ones that immigrated here, especially the ones that settled on the East Coast, are from dirt poor Southern Italy or Sicily. So like they are comprised of these people that like had very little educate, like that is like, that is my offspring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like Joe Dirt, who had to change his name from Giuseppe Derto. When, more sullen than you imagine. Maybe I'll sit up. Maybe my laying back has affected me.
I love it.
Okay.
Your parents were together when he died, or had they separated? Do you know the details of that dynamic?
Yes, they were together when he died. Yeah, they so he had when 5 or 7 years, I always forget the number, that he went to prison for. So they had me when he got out. And then, but at that point, the stint in prison, I think my mom had lost a lot of love for him there, because like he now left her alone for 7 years as a product of who he was. And, my mom's side of the family that raised me, had, disconnected from her. My grandma especially was like, knew who he was and where he came from. So she didn't want any parts of that. So my mom was now alone without family to really speak to anymore, without her own mother, basically living alone in an apartment, really only with his side of the family, as like a friend group. So I think she resented him for that,
Yeah.
of sort of like, now this was her lot. And you know, I think she wanted to make up for the love that she maybe wasn't getting from him at that point and have that in a child. So they chose to have me, and then very soon after he died. But in a way, obviously, it's unfortunate. I don't, you don't wish that upon anybody, but like, bad or good. But was a means of her to escape that.
Yeah.
So that, I am like lucky in that sense, and she was.
What does a made man mean?
A made man means someone higher up in the organization. Basically, like, you're afforded more protection, upper mobility, and yeah. I'm trying to think of other. I'm sure people out there. I mean, people. This genre, people know so much about that they know more than I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I was shielded from it for quite a while, but like, to become one means you have had to kill someone. So, once I think later on in life, learning that and realizing that had to be done was affecting as well.
No exceptions. That was just.
I believe so. Yeah. Once again, anytime I ever talk about him and sort of make proclamations, the comment section is like, that's not actually true. It's just by a bunch of dorks who love this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your upbringing, is that a fairly common family story? I mean, everybody knows The Sopranos, but in North Jersey, where you're from, is this an aberration, or is this no? It's okay.
That is that's nice in the sense of like, it's not easy to pinpoint who he was, and I mean, I have a different last name, but like because there unfortunately were so many that went this route.
Yeah.
I mean, when she told me, that was a part of like, I'm not super shocked. I would be surprised if she was like, your father was a college graduate who believed in equality for all. I would have been like, you don't say.
Well, this is a hilarious background story. I think you said earlier in the conversation, you always knew you wanted to go into comedy, or you always gravitated towards it. Were there specific comedians you saw growing up that you just fell in love with? Where did that come from?
I think it came from, I mean, obviously there were so many lies in my household. I mean, it was, my dad being the biggest one, but they were just like, it really did operate like a corrupt government. Like there was just no truth. And when I saw stand-ups, and I think particularly George Carlin and Chris Rock, they were telling the truth, to my knowledge. They were really plain spoken and telling the truth, but in a way which was palatable and charming, and people were having fun with the truth. And I think that was really attractive to me. There was never, but I never saw myself there. Like, I was never the class clown. I always had, I think, naturally a kind of comedic mind. It's just how in the way that I'm broken mentally, it seemed to service itself as a stand-up comedian. But I never was a performer. I'm very shy, very, very, like almost like diffident as a child. But it was that ability to tell the truth in a way where like, oh, people are having fun with the truth instead of it being like a major problem. Was really appealing.
What were your first stand-up opportunities? How did you create them? What do you remember about them?
I mean, definitely my first college project. And outside of that, I think, honestly, I think it was just like acting out in public, a lot of like, I mean, I grew up in the Jackass Tom Green era. Like, that's when I was in high school. Those were my formative years. So it was like a lot of, just like stunts, like just stunts that I regret, like, I remember, I think one summer coming home from college, my Greg, who I mentioned, like, we just pretended that we just dressed up like Sears employees and pretended to work there. and we were literally telling people to go on break, and we were there from corporate. And we were like, oh, actually, management wants you in the office right now. And I remember at one point I was behind a cash register. Like, I remember like, wow, we've gone pretty far. And then like a customer was like, can you ring me up? And then I was like, well, I guess this is the end of that.
Yeah.
No, obviously I can't. So, I mean, just things like that. And then like, at the time, obviously this is way pre-phone. So it's like another friend of ours, like my buddy Darren, was filming us with like, which now seems like a, very cumbersome camcorder, but like, I think like wrapped around his arm in a windbreaker as he was like just like pointing. It was like the whole thing was such a bad scene. But things like that. Just a lot of like, I mean, stand-ups, especially before they start doing comedy, and even in the beginning years of them doing comedy, like we are an insufferable bunch because like we're not on stage. So we're doing that off stage. Yeah. And like that is a lot. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, even there have been moments where I've been talking to you on the couch where I've like just absentmindedly gone into bits or stories where I'm like, oh, Jesus, now you're performing for one on the couch and I just feel bad.
Never stops.
Yeah. I mean, like it gets a lot easier to turn off, but like you just kind of, it's always there to switch into.
Yeah.
But man, when you're not doing it or you're first starting doing it, oof, are you a tough hang? Oh, it is not good.
What was your first stand-up opportunity? Do you remember?
Yeah. I mean, the first opportunity, it's hard to say opportunity just because like it's just an open mic, you know? So it's just, I remember doing, I was so nervous. I'm trying to think of like the first. I think Greg and I had we were doing a sketch show before we moved to New York and Jersey. And oh man, we were doing a sketch show in like, this is like blue collar, like meaty red New Jersey. And I think we opened with like a 9/11 sketch. Like it was awful. Like, and we had come from the world of like, we loved like alts, like, The State, Mr. Show, like that world of like highbrow alt sketch comedy. And we were trying to do that at a place in Jersey called Bar Over Here or something where like people were like just not even confused, but angry.
Yeah.
So I think I might have done stand up on one of those shows, but early on when I first moved to New York, I think this is probably more telling. I just didn't, I was so scared to go up as myself. I used to go up as like a character kind of called, but it was me. It was just, I thought it was fun. Leslie Oliver was my name. And I would go up and the whole bit was I would tell a very long-winded story about nothing. And then I would get to the end of it and be like, "Can you believe it?" Like, and I honestly, and it was pretty funny because like it was funny in the sense of like the premise of it was funny, and the other comedians in the audience knew enough to be like, this is a funny idea, as like, if this is your bit, this is funny. But it was a lot of those people who saw me then would then see me years later, and then my comedy was like, more pedestrian, more like, this is my world, like this, like more it was less heady. So they would see me years later and be like, I can't wait for him to go up. Yeah, you got to see what he does. And then I would just be talking about my life or my family or like, my now wife, whatever. And they'd be like, huh, that's, wow, he's really changed.
But when you first got here, you were working, I assume. You had another job. I'd love to hear about the evolution of your survival just economically in New York. How did that progress?
So I moved here and I still wasn't sure. So I still kept a foothold in the world of architecture. So I wasn't sure. I was like, well, maybe I'd like it better or find it more rewarding if I was on a job site. So my first bit of work here, I worked at AmeriCorps. So I worked at Habitat for Humanity for a year, which, I mean, it didn't pay much, but I also didn't need much at the time. Yeah. Like Greg and I and this girl Shannon were splitting a 2-bedroom in Sunnyside, Queens, where Greg and I would rotate the bedroom. So like rent was dirt cheap. It was just a mattress on the floor and then a broken futon in the living room. So you really just didn't need much. So, and the only thing I was doing were open mics. So it was a very meager living, but it was just like enough. And, you're in like your mid to late 20s. So like you really need next to nothing. And the last place I had lived was in the woods of Hawaii. So just being indoors was a step up. so that was awesome. So from there, I worked in the Apple Store. I worked in the Apple Store as a part-time specialist for, I think, 2 or 3 years. And, that was an amazing place to work because everybody was in the arts that worked there, basically. So it was easy to get shifts covered. The hours were flexible. You could wear shorts to work. It's like, Apple has always been like, it's very much a corporation, but it's one of those corporations that were like, we're cool guys. You know what I mean? Like, come on, like, you can wear cargo shorts to work. Don't mind you about the, the data centers or anything that, don't worry about that stuff. So, and I was pretty lucky where I think I had a pretty rich childhood and 20s. I had traveled a bunch and I had kind of lived a life, and I had been through a little bit of hardship, and I had kind of experienced a lot of the things already in terms of like death, bad breakups, these things. So by the time I started comedy in my late 20s, I had kind of I felt like I had known who I was a little bit more than other people when they were starting. And like, I had been writing a while because I had harbored this, love for it for a long time. So like, I got to know my voice a little bit quicker on stage, and I had something to say a little bit earlier. And that's not to say I've grown much from there, and maybe that's been the problem a little bit, but like, but starting out, I was feted pretty early just because of that. So like, I think I had primarily started being like a working comic 3 years into comedy. Yeah, I had got plucked to do New Faces Montreal 3 years in. I had done all the cool New York shows. So like I was featuring on the road for bigger comics, like, and my rent wasn't that much. And then if you had saw in the beginning of my starting in stand-up, you'd be like, oh, well, you're going to be famous in 6 months. Like, I had done all the cool shows. I had done New Faces. My first audition was for this, like, at the time, YouTube was launching all these, like studio-produced channels. And one of them was the Sports Network. And the first audition I ever did, I just got it. And it was like a 6-figure salary. So I just quit the Apple Store immediately. Yeah, like, man, I was on this insane trajectory.
Whoa.
And so I from there, I was still living at the time, Greg and I had moved out of that place, but we were in another place that was like a 2-bedroom with like Greg and his now wife and another couple. So like our rent was astronomically low. Yeah. I had a 6-figure job salary. I had no responsibilities. So I had it given me the opportunity to like save enough money where then I never had to get another job outside of comedy ever again. I've been trying to just maintain that ever since. Now the dream has changed drastically. There was a point where I was like, oh, maybe I can get on TV or like, I not get on TV, but like maybe I'll host SNL. Like, you start moving along, you start hitting the rungs on that ladder. You start to like really see the possibilities ahead of you as like real things. And now I'm just like, if I can keep doing this, that's it. That's all I want. So, which I'm cool with. Yeah. I like the sort of the ups and downs of, I guess, like a career in the arts or whatever.
You said earlier part of what you loved about Carlin and Rock was their ability to tell the truth in an entertaining way where people would laugh and have a good time. Were there truths, have there been truths that you've consistently wanted to share, particularly early on when you're on this crazy trajectory or even now that you come back to that you like to talk about in front of other people?
In what sense?
Subject matters in general.
Oh, yeah. That is, and I think I've never, and I still can't, and, not that it's it's just a part of me I've never been able to like unlock fully, and I keep trying, and that's sort of the fun part. But I think it's being able to articulate so well as they did, and being like, hey, the levity is kept alive, but I am telling you something that's outside of just like, and not so much just an observation, but here is here is a thought process behind this observation. Here's why this observation, in my opinion, might be happening in a measured and honest way. I don't know if that makes a ton of sense, but like, I think just with the observation, especially now, because like, art moves throughout the years.
Yeah.
So it's like, what was considered in vogue, or like not in vogue, but novel 20 years ago.
Edgy.
And edgy is now, you can't just stop there now. Like, I really thought it was like interesting watching like the Naked Gun movie that was made a couple of years ago, because it's not often that you get to see, like, you have tangible evidence of change within a medium. And like, so, because they were doing a lot of the same Naked Gun jokes that they had been doing 30 years ago, but those on their own just aren't good enough anymore. Like, they're a 6 and now we're at an 8. So like, they had to build on top of that. And when they did, you're like, oh, this is where we are now. That's how it feels, where it's like, it's not enough, I feel like, anymore just to make the observation and for people to go like, wow. Now it's like, oh, here's why I think that's happening. And I think it's being able to articulate that in a way, which is like, I'd love to be able to do, which I think they did. And I think Carlin even more so than Chris Rock, but like I feel like that's really cool.
You said currently, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, that your goal is just to keep kind of doing what you're doing. How did your goals, and why did your goals change over the years?
Well, I think you be a little realistic with yourself in terms of like, okay, especially as you get older in doing this, you're like, look, man, I'm 43 years old. Like, it's hard to imagine a world where this gets better. You know what I mean? So this might be it. So if this is it, it's just kind of working off like, and that's not to say I've given up hope or else I would stop doing this. Obviously I haven't, but it is to say like, hey, if this is it, you need to make peace with this. And like, then what becomes the goal? And then the goal is just like, I just want to be able to keep doing this without getting a day job. That's really it. Because you strip all the other parts away and you go like, okay, those things might not be in the cards anymore. And that's just a matter of a moment passing. And you just like, that's an okay thing to accept. But in doing so, like, all right, so if all that isn't in the cards, then why are you doing this? And then you have a real honest conversation with yourself of like, well, you're doing this because if that didn't exist, you love to do this and it gives you purpose. So let's just ride that out for as long, because like, if that goes away, then things get really dark. Yeah. So, it's like it becomes like very elemental.
Do you think at this point that, let's say hypothetically in another universe, that trajectory had continued to boom, that you would be in a better place in life?
I mean, like cosmetically, sure, but but in doing that, I don't know that I would have had to confront deeper issues about myself that has made me, I feel like, a more rounded person. So,
and maybe a better comic.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. I mean, like when you're striving to like, improve upon yourself, you're naturally going to be better. I think you're absolutely right. I think I would have gotten more complacent and I would have still been reaching. I think that's just like a natural part of who I am. And I think my love for stand up, but I don't think I would have been, I think that the fervor wouldn't have been as much. But yeah, it'd be nice to have a cold plunge or whatever. I don't know.
The dream. That is success right there.
That's how I mark success.
Absolutely.
An ice bath in your living room.
How about, these days, I don't know how structured you are in your habits, but like, how do you go about making your material? Do you have a writing time every week? What does that look like for you? Yeah,
it's always changing. And I think that's the cool part is like your system of workflow, at least for me, has always evolved throughout the years. Now, and especially with like getting to a certain age and sort of having that conversation with myself of like, hey, if this is it, what do you really want to do? And more than anything, I love doing stand up and writing stand up is is the most natural to me when it comes to like all forms of comedy. So like, you know, I was kind of boring, but like, not your question is not boring. Just like my response, like Mondays, I write stand up. Tuesdays, but then it became this thing of like, it's isolating, you know. Writing, as it gets better, you're alone more, and like stand up by nature is isolating. So like, and eventually you just go, well, like, hey, if I'm not like, I want to make stuff with my friends, you know, like that's the best. Hanging out with your friends, having a good time, making a thing, and especially as you get older, you want more excuses to see your friends. So like, if it's under the guise of work, that's like a win-win kind of thing. So like, Mondays I'll write stand up, Tuesdays I'll write sketch, and then Wednesdays and then also too I'm like, all right, well, if stand up, not that it's not the thing, but like if it's just gonna be this, like you don't not that you don't like, you sacrifice so much to get to wherever you get to, but then if you get there, it's like you kind of want to enjoy it, you know. What was all the work for then? So it becomes a thing where it's like you don't, also as you get, you know, more proficient at it, you don't need to do it every day too. So like Wednesdays I will work on like an essay and see like, hey, let's see if this gives me purpose and if this is like something that I could share that people are like, hey, this is good, you know. So like I think I'm allowing myself more room to play around creatively and seeing what sticks, not just for my own happiness, but like, you know, maybe the advent of commercial success. But that's very, very much second in the race in terms of just like giving me happiness. And then like, honestly, the rest of the week, there's usually like one travel day. And then there's one day where it's like something comes up, you know what I mean? Or like one day where you're like, oh, like I have to film a thing, or like there's something that's like a chore day. Maybe it's not my life, but maybe it is related to comedy. So like I'm cool if I can write 3 days a week, one of them being stand-up, one of them being sketch, and one of them being like something else related to comedy that like scratches an itch.
In an ideal week for you, how often would you be up on stage performing?
Ideally, it would be 5 days with the weekends off. I mean, comedy, obviously the weekends are like, you know what I mean? I think ideally it'd be like Sundays and Mondays off because, you know, it's nice to just be home with my wife all day Sunday and have nothing ahead of me. It's like, that's the best. And then Monday, it's nice to have Monday off because you get to reset and kind of gear up for the whole week. And then Tuesday through Saturday, I would do one show. I just need one show Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm not looking to do any more than that. Just one. I can listen to what I did that night. I can spend the day to process it. I can rewrite. I can go up with it again. And then 2 to 3 shows on a Friday, Saturday is awesome because like that kinetic energy of bouncing around and like you're locked into the mindset and like, and those crowds are hot. So like, you know, you try something, you listen between this spot and the next spot. And in that listen, you go, take out that word, put this thing here, do a thing here. This needs more. So like that, the amount of alive you feel in that hour or two between spots. And there's something about the weekend too, because you're out and you're running around in New York and everyone's out and everyone's alive. You feel so alive in that moment. So that is the ideal week for me. But once on the weekday. I'm not I can't do that anymore, man. Give me one, let me go home, let me sulk, let me sit in my bomb that I took on a Wednesday and go get them again Thursday.
Speaking of truth, are there truths today that you are coming back to and talking about that you societally or personally or what's on your mind? What have you been talking about?
It's funny as the more you do it, because I think I've done 3 hours going on a kind of in Congress working on a 4th and 5th at the same time because they're about different things. And like you do see themes pop up like in every one of them. And some of them are embarrassing. You know what I mean? You're like, well, you always have one joke about jacking off, don't you? Like, like you're just like, wow, voice of a generation. You really thought this would be you? Every hour you dedicate 3 minutes to beating off. It's like,
old habits die hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, but then as you go on, you start to introduce new things. Like I'm always like the frustration, but in the same way celebrating them that I've always felt with my mom or my family has always been there. And then like you kind of add things as you go where you're like, okay, like, all right, it seems like I have some issues with the wealth equality in the country. You know, it seems like I have some like issues with like what it means to be a man and what that conversation is. And like, it's just like you're having the same conversation, but as you go, you're getting better at being able to articulate that conversation. So, you know, like, so in some ways you're like, people that may never have seen you might be like, oh, this is fresh to me. Other people that have seen you are like, he's talking about this shit again, but at least he's getting better at it. So I think that's the hope. They're really, you know, the things that irk you, like, you know, and I'm not the most, you know, I'm always been, impressed by people who are just like so passionate about such a wide array of topics. Like I seem to have like under 10 that really emotionally affect me. Yeah. And I think it's just really fine tuning your position on those 10 things. And like, and every now and then like 11th one will sneak in. And you're like, oh, that's new, you know, but you're trying them out, you know, you'll be like, yeah, maybe I feel strongly about AI. And then you try it and you're like, I guess I don't, you know, or you hear somebody who does and you're like, that's what that should look like. And that's fine. I'll just stay in my lane. Like you get a little bit better too about being like, all right, this is where I think I operate best. Not even from like the success of like an audience having a good time with me, but how wearing that suit feels on me, you know? Because you don't forget too, you're saying these things thousands of times. Yeah. So like within that thousands, you know, you really get a sense of like, oh my God, am I bored to tears with what I'm talking about? Or there's still that lingering passion that was when I first wrote the bit. Yeah. And like doing it ad nauseum, it's like a marriage, you know, where you're like, you know, if you're there every day. So like at some point, like if you're still there, you're like, I guess I really fucking love my wife, you know, like, but if it's that deep love is not there, that's when you go like, shit.
Oh boy.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you noticing about what it means? I'm just getting back from a trip with a bunch of guys for over the 4th of July who I grew up with. And we talked a lot about modern men. Yes. What do you talk about? What are you noticing? What irks you about, or what observations have you made about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I'm trying to get better at, because I think it goes back to what we were saying a little bit, where I'm able to make these observations that are clearly fascinating to me, but I really can't crystallize what about it is like really sticks in my craw. Like obviously like the manosphere, Andrew Tate stuff, like, you know, I haven't been doing this as a joke, but I do think it is funny. Like I read like a lengthy article, almost 100% of the guys that have stopped following in his teachings, they all cited the same reason. They just got a girlfriend. That's how beautiful is that? That they were like, women are inferior. Then they met one and they were like, they're really nice. Wow. It's just like, it's just such a fun, like Occam's razor, the most simple solution to kind of thing. I hope I'm saying Occam's razor.
I think you are. I think that's correct.
Shit, I really jumped off a ledge with that. Oh God. But
talk about highbrow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh my God. I just heard somebody say this 6 months ago and I've just been trying.
It's impressive.
Yeah. But I think I have a somewhat I don't really know. It just it's such a misshapen view on what it means to be a man, I think, and it's ultimately, I mean, I think we've seen it become dangerous, you know, in terms of like and I have no problem. My whole family, I grew up Italian conservative. I have no problem with conservatives, but I think when the stakes get so high that it really becomes life and death, I think it is a little irrevocable. And I think like that's the moment that we sort of arrived at. And I think we've seen that happen with like, you know, not to get overly political, but like, you know, with Renee Good and what's the other guy's name? Jesus.
I don't know.
I hate to so flippantly talk about people that actually died. But yeah, I mean, like, point being, it's like, you know, this sort of, I just like kind of like teenage acting out. Like, I think a lot of guys right now, they have And I've seen it, like I've talked to younger comics who are guys that are just like seemingly like measured guys who like really have this longing, and I think it's because like they, with the advent of technology and like, you know, I think more gender equality, they feel lost as men as to like the guys they're supposed to be, and they have this like real longing to be like I would love to be an electrician, and like it's like I grew up around all those guys. They're miserable. You know, like go do it. Like it's a miserable existence. And I'm not saying if you're an electrician it's a miserable, but it's like what I mean is like manual labor, hard labor, like it's a tough existence. And like they don't get to be soft. They don't, but they are. They're human beings. Like it's an innate quality of human beings. It's like these are people that don't get to be people because of the lives they have to live because of their lot in life. But like they still have those feelings, and that's a tough existence. So to I think glamorize that as like it's just so off to me. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with masculinity. There isn't. There's a lot of positives to it, but I think the glomming on, like I think riding on those positives, and I think that's what a lot of these con men did, like these Andrew Tates, these sort of like manosphere guys, is like they used those positive tenets of masculinity to sneak in this really bad, despicable shit that like just kind of was like, it's like when you would buy a DVD 2-pack and you get one movie there, like this movie's awesome, but you're like, well, I guess I have to, you know, get like a Boiling Point that comes. I mean, not Boiling Point's actually a good movie, but you know what I mean. I'm not trying to besmirch Wesley Snipes here, but like I feel like that's what they've wrote in on. Like a lot of these guys, I feel bad because I was once a lost young man who had been like wronged by a woman who could have been one of these guys, and it's like, yeah, they're just like they're getting there because they're seeking out self-improvement. That's the saddest shit to me, is like they're googling, like, man, they're googling fitness, they're googling like the country has failed them economically, so they're like they're googling how to make money, and along with that has become like all of these like horrible stances and unfair stances about women and certain ethnicities that have just like, and then, you know, 6 months later, I mean, it's funny, but it's sad. Like 6 months later, what, you're dressed like Pitbull at your dinner table telling your mom why she's a whore, all because you want to do a proper push-up? It's fucking crazy. It breaks my heart.
Damn. Who do you see right now? I mean, you talked about comics who can talk about AI and it fits them. You can tell that this is their subject or whatever subject. I know you see a lot of comedians. Who do you see currently that is particularly impressive to you, especially people that are not national names?
Yeah.
Who do you admire and really like?
You know what, man? And that's been a really cool thing, is to see your own peer group sort of like start to be able to do this, you know, where it's like when I came up, you would see, you know, obviously when I was younger, you would see Carlin do it. When I came up, you would see Louis do it. You would see Bill Burr. You would see these people that were able to, and now I'm seeing it with my own peer group, and it's really fucking cool. Like, and I'm a homer here. Obviously, these are my good friends, but like Stavros Halkias is like so good at articulating, but not seeming didactic and still being fun before anything else. Michelle Wolf, who's like a very, very close friend of mine from when I started out, like similar in that way. Like even starting to see like my buddy like Sam Morrell is able to do it. Like you're Normand has always like, you know, been able to do it. And, you know, as you get on, you're able to not just introduce the subject, but be like, here's what I think might be the driving force behind the subject, and not in a way which is like anyone is being, you're pointing the finger, but you're being like, here's why the finger is even extended in the first place. Like coming from a place of empathy on those subjects is like usually the way in to get people to be like, hey, I don't feel like I'm being made fun of or I'm being yelled at here. I just feel like you're seeing what my place might have been in a weak moment. And I think like if you're able to pull that off, but then like also keep it where we're laughing, like, fuck, that's amazing.
Yeah. I always close these conversations by asking guests and artists how they think about the word success. We've touched on this already during the conversation, and maybe you've already answered this question, but at this point in your life and career, what does that word mean to you? What does success look like?
It's just every day I get to do this with a bit of an exhale, you know? And I really think as at least I've gone on, like, I don't think I've been lucky in the sense like of like, I've had a lot of, I'm a like only child, single mom, like my mom, I hate to, that's a whole other podcast, me getting into how her spending habits have ruined my adult life. But, but, oh, cool. You want her to look like the most fuckable woman in the nursing home. Well, I have to do another cruise now, you know? So, but I've never been like drawn to money in the sense of like material goods. And I've been lucky enough to really never have like a debilitating drug problem or alcohol problem. So like I'd only ever wanted money for the sense of like, oh, I can breathe, you know? So I think that is a two-pronged answer for me of like, hey, I have enough work ahead of me that I can continue to do this and just do this and dedicate myself to solely this. And then also that there is like, I mean, this part I haven't figured out, but like there is some semblance of financial security down the road where like my first thought when I wake up is like, whew, you know, it's just like, oh, I can write freely today and I'm not writing with like a gun to my head.
Yeah.
And that, but I think before any of those is just like, man, rich and it's like, it's such a, stitch this on a throw pillow for God's sake. Sometimes you hear yourself and like, oh, I guess I just boil down to, you can buy me a Cracker Barrel. This is my ethos. But it really is as simple as like rich in friends and love. And I think if you're leading with those two things, like, man, is that such a huge part of like the three-pronged problem in my head. Yeah.
Beautiful. Dude, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, this was awesome, man. You're the man.